face of civilization has been shaped by the use of energy. Over the past century, coal, oil, natural gas, and electricity have transformed the human condition. But as the world's population grows and demands increase, the thirst for energy cannot be quenched by fossil fuels alone. Their limited supply and environmental repercussions have sparked a search for something better. The goal is a world powered by clean, efficient fuels, produced from renewable resources such as sunshine and wind. One possible answer is rising to the forefront and is being touted as the key to a clean, sustainable future. It's the fuel that took us to the moon. Hydrogen. Could it be the gasoline of the 21st century?
Hydrogen is the fuel of the future. I mean, there is no question in my mind.
You can make it from a variety of different primary fuels through a variety of different processes.
Is a hydrogen car going to cost more?
Within our lifetimes, hydrogen will tangibly and positively affect the life of every single person.
But is it safe?
Some of the challenges are technical. Fuel cells are still addressing cost targets, performance targets.
It could take place much faster than many people believe.
It will be good for all the people of the world.
Could the simplest atom in the universe be the fuel that powers our future? Governments and major corporations think so, and they're investing billions to develop this new energy system. Some say the development of hydrogen energy will spawn a revolution as dramatic as the light bulb or the microchip. Are we standing at the threshold of the hydrogen age? Hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, powering all the stars, powering our own sun. Hydrogen is everywhere. Over 90% of all the atoms in the universe are hydrogen atoms. Combined with oxygen, it forms water. Add carbon, and it's a basic building block of life. In pure form, it can be a clean, safe, and powerful fuel.
Hydrogen could turn out to be as important to the energy economy of the 21st century as the silicon chip has been to the information economy. Hydrogen is not an energy source such as coal or oil, but it is a manufactured fuel like gasoline or electricity. And we can use renewable sources of energy such as solar power and wind energy to split molecules of water into hydrogen and oxygen. And then the hydrogen's available to be used as a fuel in our automobiles, in our homes, and even in our industries.
WorldWatch Institute President Christopher Flavin has spent his career examining issues key to sustaining human progress on a finite planet.
Some of today's biggest problems, ranging from lung disease to climate change and terrorism, are caused by our extraordinary dependence on fossil fuels. Hydrogen is really the answer to a fundamental challenge, which is how do we get elusive energy sources such as wind power and sunlight into the tanks of our cars. The other nice thing about hydrogen is that in the short run we can derive it from natural gas and potentially other fossil fuels so that the hydrogen age can begin almost immediately.
In coming decades, hydrogen will power the largest machines down to the smallest electronic gadgets. We're going to see many fundamental changes because energy is central to pretty much all that we do.
Author Peter Lydon, former managing editor of Wired magazine and the knowledge developer for Global Business Network, spends much of his time envisioning how new technologies will impact the future.
If we were to jump into a time machine and fast forward 50 years, what would our world look like? There's a good chance that most of the technology we own would be powered by hydrogen. We'd be thinking back to this day and age and wondering how we ever survived without it.
All new ideas are first thought of as really foolish, and then when they begin to catch on, they're fought against, and then they come to a stage where everyone says, well, it's so obvious, why was it ever questioned?
Where will the hydrogen come from? Will it be as safe as the fuels we now use? How much will it cost? And how long before we see it in our own communities? While such far-reaching transitions are never easily or quickly achieved, there are places where the transition is already beginning. I'm Leonard Nimoy. Come with me on a global journey and see how hydrogen energy can be the answer to some of mankind's most fundamental challenges. Iceland is a nation of raging waterfalls and geothermal abundance. In 1999, Iceland amazed the world when it announced its intention to become the first hydrogen society. Professor Bragi Arnason was the first to recognize the potential of hydrogen energy in Iceland.
Having been doing research work on our domestic energy sources for many years, it became clear to me that hydrogen could be a very good solution to replace imported fossil fuel.
Professor Arnason has been writing articles about hydrogen and the hydrogen society for the last 25 years. And a lot of people argue that he was the crazy professor if you go 25 years back, because people didn't realize or think about this at that stage. And nobody worried about the issues we're worrying about in today's society.
We have these cheap energy sources, so we can start the transformation into hydrogen energy today, so that Iceland could be some kind of pilot country to show how the transformation could be done.
The Icelandic Minister for Industry and Commerce, Mrs. Valgerður Sverrisdóttir.
The possibility of producing hydrogen has double benefit for us. For the first, it saves our foreign currency for importing oil, and secondly, it reduces our greenhouse gas emission.
The Icelandic government strongly supports the use of hydrogen. In Iceland, transitioning to hydrogen is a national agenda.
Iceland is seen as really a shining star in terms of the policies that they've adopted on hydrogen. One is that it's really woken people up. The support for the hydrogen economy project and the policies that are going into supporting that have been enormous. There are 95% of people are strongly in favour of developing a hydrogen economy in Iceland.
You can see in the background we have a little bit of rain coming down, which I foresee is the best thing we can get because it's raining power.
To be clear, hydrogen is a manufactured fuel. Just as gasoline is manufactured using oil, it has to be extracted from other things using energy.
Hydrogen is everywhere, but it's hard to find on Earth as a separate element. Instead, it is found in combination with carbon in everything from hydrocarbon fuels to plants and animals. But the most readily available source of hydrogen on Earth is something we find all around us: water.
The moisture that falls on the Earth each hour contains enough hydrogen to meet our annual energy needs many times over. And in fact, the technology already exists to split that water using electricity, a process that scientists call electrolysis.
A device known as an electrolyzer can be used to split hydrogen from water. A water molecule is composed of one oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms, also known as H2O. When electricity is applied to water containing an electrolyte, the molecule splits, drawing the oxygen towards the positive electrode, while the hydrogen is drawn towards the negative electrode.
Electrolysis can use any source of electricity, and since electrolyzers are scalable even to a very small size, they're a good match for solar energy and wind power. Using renewable energy produces a very clean hydrogen cycle, but in addition, the amount of energy available from renewable resources is vast.
Our long-term goal is to produce hydrogen using renewable energy resources such as solar, wind, and biomass.
Since 1980, the world has consumed far more oil than has been discovered. We're now finding only 1 barrel of new oil for every 4 barrels that we use. The lion's share that remains is still locked underground, controlled by a handful of countries in the Middle East. The oil-consuming nations of the world that rely on these reserves are highly vulnerable to the political instabilities in the region and the goodwill of its leaders.
It's a single-source dependency that takes away our freedom. Right now, the United States is tied, essentially, to Arab oil imports. With hydrogen as a currency instead of gasoline, for the first time in man's history, we're allowed to use any primary source.
Hydrogen offers a significant advantage there in dealing with energy security, because you can get it all the way from renewable sources using the sun and water and wind, geothermal or hydro, or even nuclear for the electricity. But you can also get it from all the hydrocarbon fuels.
What this does is it gives us options to use different domestic fuels that can insulate us from price shocks, supply disruptions, and other threats to our national and economic security.
Whether it's fusion, a hydrogen economy, or ideas that we've not yet explored, I think that we need to leapfrog the status quo and prepare for a revolution in how we produce, deliver, and use energy.
More than 750 million automotive vehicles are currently in use worldwide. That number is likely to double over the next 20 years. As the world's population continues to increase, the demand for energy is expected to rise by at least 50% over the next 2 decades. Air pollution and toxic spills are obvious impacts of our dependence on fossil fuels. But experts increasingly point to the potential impact for climate change as the most serious consequence of their use. Dr. Rajan Pachari is chairman of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
What's happened is, since the Industrial Revolution began, we've been burning more and more fossil fuels. This has increased the concentration of these gases in the Earth's atmosphere.
Many scientists believe that the Earth's temperature could rise as much as 5 degrees Celsius in the next 100 years. These temperature increases are expected to cause a rise in sea level and alter local climate conditions.
What you would see are some extreme events. The fact is that the sea levels are rising throughout the planet. This poses an enormous threat to the coastal areas of a large number of countries.
Rising temperatures also have the potential to affect forests, crops, human health, and many types of ecosystems. The impact of rising temperatures regionally can already be seen in one of Earth's coldest places.
The time on the ice getting shorter and the hot days getting warmer. The beautiful time of the blizzard. I don't think I have experienced a good, beautiful blizzard out on the land in a long, long time now. Now we have big storms instead, not blizzard.
We've been noticing over the last few years that the sea ice is melting much sooner.
Rivers are flowing more because, remember, rivers are fed by the melting ice and melting snow, and now the melting permafrost.
You can't fish unless you have the sea ice, and when it breaks up earlier, you can't get to the fish by boat because it's too dangerous.
In a worldwide pattern of warming and cooling over the last 100 years, most of the Earth has warmed. Scientists still have much to learn about the effects of increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases, but agree that such increases are likely to accelerate the rate of climate change.
Fortunately, the technology has now developed at the same time we need it, so that we can get out of the business of digging up carbon and burning it and blowing it out the tailpipe and smokestack.
Hydrogen? That stuff's dangerous, isn't it?
We do have the perception of safety being an issue with anything that we fuel our vehicles with. Gasoline tanks do explode. We do have issues with any energy resource, and hydrogen is an energy resource. It's going to be packaged in one way or another on a vehicle, and it's going to present safety issues that are going to need to be dealt with.
We've got many safety features on our station. We have hydrogen sensors that sense for any hydrogen leaks. We have a computer system that monitors all systems to ensure that there's no problems. And we have a flame detector that watches the vehicle's refueling station at all times.
We're working on an international basis to develop common protocols, codes, and standards to ensure safe handling and to ensure interoperability of all of these systems that we want to work in the hydrogen future.
A study by the Ford Motor Company has shown that with good engineering, a hydrogen-fueled vehicle should be just as safe as a gasoline vehicle.
We don't think that the safety issues with hydrogen are any greater than any other energy form like gasoline, oil, or natural gas. And indeed, it has some characteristics that in the long run may give it some safety advantages.
Hydrogen is a highly versatile energy carrier. Like any other fuel, it can be burned, powering a rocket like NASA's Space Shuttle, or an internal combustion engine. BMW and Ford have already developed conventional IC engine cars that run on hydrogen.
You can burn hydrogen in an engine similar to what we do today with gasoline or natural gas, but you can also use it in a device called a fuel cell.
Today, one of the most popular types of fuel cells is called a PEM, or proton exchange membrane fuel cell. In a PEM fuel cell, as the hydrogen wants to bond with oxygen, it is drawn towards the air on the opposite side of the membrane. However, the membrane allows only the protons to pass through, forcing the electrons to take the long way around. This movement of electrons is what we call electricity. On the other side of the membrane, the hydrogen merges with the oxygen, producing H2O, or water, clean enough to drink.
Fuel cells produce electricity very efficiently, and they can easily be used to power cars or trucks, or even buildings or ships.
One of the great virtues of hydrogen fuel cells is that They scale almost infinitely to different sizes, everything from hearing aid batteries to portable fuel cells for your cell phone or computer.
It's possible in the not too distant future that as a consumer you will be able to buy and install a cartridge of hydrogen on your cell phone or your portable laptop computer and provide power to that device for 40 days.
At the other end of the scale, fuel cells are being installed to power entire office buildings, completely independent of the power grid.
Fuel cells will go first into buildings. The fuel cells in the buildings will typically get their hydrogen from natural gas. That is already starting to happen.
In the heart of New York City, the newest building in Times Square is getting a significant portion of its power requirements from 2 fuel cells installed on site.
Each cell provides 200,000 watts of power. They're very easy to maintain, they're very quiet, very clean. It reduces by 400,000 watts of power what we need to bring in from the outside. They're very reliable, they can be counted on. We hope that other buildings and future projects take the example that we've led.
Across the Atlantic, in an English village 25 miles south of London, the same type of fuel cell is serving a far different kind of customer.
Woking had one of the first public electricity supplies in the UK way back in 1890. We thought it was about time that we brought the first fuel cell into the UK, and what better place to have it than Woking. This fuel cell supplies energy to the Woking Park, the Leisure Lagoon and the Leisure Centre plus ancillary buildings. It supplies electricity, it supplies heating for the heating circuits and hot water. At the moment we're actually reforming natural gas into hydrogen gas and extracting oxygen from outside air. But the future will actually generate the hydrogen from renewable energy like solar energy, wind energy, hydro. One of the other things that we're doing in Woking, which will be of interest to the developing world, is the recovery of the water that's generated. This installation here, we calculate, will generate something like 1 million litres of pure water a year.
So what would it take to apply this idea to every city in the world?
Right now you can buy gasoline virtually anywhere, and for hydrogen to be widely used, it's going to have to be just as available.
Most of the available hydrogen today is produced from natural gas using a process called steam reformation, which essentially reacts steam with natural gas, extracting hydrogen from both compounds. But the marriage of hydrogen and renewable energy sources offers a unique opportunity.
Hydrogen is really the missing link to the widespread use of renewable energy.
When energy is generated using, for instance, solar or wind power, the recurring problem is that the energy is intermittent. It must be used while the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. Unfortunately, the availability of energy doesn't always coincide with demand, which means that the energy must be stored to be of real value. Conventional batteries have only limited storage capability and are expensive. Hydrogen solves this problem.
Conventional solar power development is accelerating and the cost continues to drop. However, work in the biotechnology and nanotechnology fields are poised to have even greater impact. There are nanotech companies right now developing entirely new kinds of solar cells which dramatically improve efficiencies while cutting costs.
For more than a decade, wind has been the world's fastest growing energy source. In fact, it grew 27% in 2002 and is projected to grow to 15 times the current level over the next 20 years.
When electricity from renewable sources is converted to hydrogen, we can store that energy and use it when it's needed. With this technology, renewable energy will become real competition to fossil fuels.
Off the coast of Germany in the Baltic Sea, the U31, a new kind of submarine, is being tested by the German Navy. This submarine is like no other that has ever existed. Its principal propulsion system is a fuel cell running on hydrogen. The fuel cell allows the U31 to have excellent performance while operating very quietly, making it virtually undetectable when maneuvering below the surface. The U31 isn't just propelled with hydrogen power. The fuel cell provides electricity for the ship's command and control systems. It also generates fresh water for use by its crew.
Fuel cells are very well suited for use in all kinds of ships. They can also be used to power pollution-free train locomotives.
"60,000 feet above Hawaii, a curious flying machine soars just at the edge of the stratosphere. A joint venture of NASA and AeroVironment Corporation, its name is Helios, and it's the world's first aircraft powered by solar energy and hydrogen. It has a wingspan of 246 feet and can stay aloft for months at a time. Helios may soon change the way we communicate with each other." Helios was developed by a team led by Paul MacCready, an inventor who is no stranger to shaking up the status quo. MacCready is responsible for a number of aviation milestones, including the first human-powered aircraft, the first solar-powered aircraft, and with General Motors, the innovative Sunracer solar vehicle.
Helios is the first operational plane, flies with hydrogen and oxygen.
The key to Helios's extraordinary performance is its light propulsion system, enabled by solar panels, hydrogen, and fuel cells.
The Helios airplanes are aimed at flying continuously at altitudes of about 60 or 65,000 feet.
Above 60,000 feet, the winds are very light, and it is clear and sunny 365 days a year. The Helios propulsion system has two parts. The fuel cell continuously combines hydrogen and oxygen to produce electricity and water. By day, the electrolyzer uses electricity from solar panels on the wings to split the water into yet more hydrogen and oxygen. The loop is closed and can go on almost indefinitely. This lightweight combination of solar panels and fuel cells allows Helios to fly for up to 6 months at a time. This ability to stay airborne for long periods has sparked a revolutionary idea, an ultra-low-cost replacement for satellites called SkyTower.
SkyTower is a fantastic idea. It would be a flying communications hub relaying mobile phone traffic and broadband internet to everyone under its footprint.
Imagine such a craft flying in circles over a major geographical area, delivering broadband communications to everyone below.
Another capability will particularly benefit developing countries. With SkyTower, such countries may never need to develop a traditional communications grid. High-speed internet and mobile phone service will become available to everyone and at very low cost. It really could shrink the digital divide.
Helios is a preview of even bigger things to come in aviation.
There are several advantages to hydrogen as an aviation fuel. First of all, it weighs 1/3 the weight of conventional jet fuel, and therefore the range of the aircraft is extended, and it burns without pollution.
Already on the drawing boards are new generations of commercial and military aircraft that will have engines fueled by hydrogen.
Aviation presents its own unique set of technical challenges. Because of this, it will probably take longer for hydrogen to be adopted in a major way.
We love our cars.
I like big cars.
Spacious.
Fast. Power.
People have strong preferences and expectations when they go to buy a car. In recent years, the various alternative-powered vehicles introduced have generally not met those expectations.
Where alternatives are concerned, the problem has been low expectations. Hydrogen and fuel cells will change that.
The auto industry is really banking on the fact that these cars are going to meet or even exceed the public's expectations.
Because electric motors provide constant output over a wide range of speeds, fuel cell electric vehicles may offer better performance than conventional cars.
Performance.
Style.
Safety.
Quiet, the low emissions, and I long for the blue skies again.
Today's cars are only about 15% efficient, but a fuel cell car may be able to more than double that efficiency.
The acceleration on this vehicle is as good or better than the V6 gasoline model of the same platform. The torque is also better. It has over 200 foot-pounds of torque.
The case that the car is a worldwide environmental problem is not a case of the cars itself. It's the case of using the wrong energy, polluting energy.
There are 60 vehicle models of one vintage or another that have already been either produced or under development.
General Motors holds over 30 patents on their new high-wire concept vehicle. It's a hydrogen-powered drive-by-wire car with steering that resembles that of an airplane.
All of the controls of this car are through the electrical controls from basically the instrument panel.
But the most remarkable thing about this car is that it is seated on a platform that integrates a fuel cell, motor, and steering into one highly engineered chassis.
You notice that it's a very novel design in that the very front of it's coming down here. There's no engine compartment in the front. There's no engine compartment in the back. All of the fuel cell electric drive is in what we call the skateboard chassis.
Any number of interchangeable body designs can be applied to the same chassis. And on the inside, the lack of an engine compartment creates a car that is spacious and lightweight.
These cars are going to be terrific in their performance, very safe, agile to drive. And in fact, in this high-wire vehicle, because of the way the fuel cell packages, we've got a center of gravity in this car that's equivalent to the Corvette.
Different from many of the alternative cars we've seen in the last decades, this one has a definite plus. It looks good.
We have to make them cost competitive, and that's our goal, and we have to do it as we introduce them into the marketplace. We don't expect our consumers to pay a premium. We have to make it cost competitive with what's out there today.
But transitioning to hydrogen poses a classic chicken and egg problem.
How are you going to sell automobiles to consumers if they can't go to the corner gas station and fill up with hydrogen? And conversely, how are you going to persuade the gasoline station to put in a hydrogen dispensing unit when there's no vehicles to come in to buy the hydrogen?
Not only must almost 1 billion vehicles be replaced, a new energy infrastructure must be created. Fortunately, this can be done incrementally, and there is a logical place to start.
Things like post office vehicles or delivery vehicles, taxis, where buses is a really good example, where the vehicles are garaged in one site, they're refueled at that site, they go out during the day and travel and come back to that site. There are actually quite a lot of fleet vehicles that are centrally refueled that are out there. Something on the order somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million new such vehicles, light-duty vehicles that go into fleets that are centrally refueled get sold just in the United States every year.
Producing large numbers of fleet vehicles containing fuel cells is going to dramatically lower their costs because of the economies of mass production.
The widespread availability of hydrogen at neighborhood fueling stations will take a decade or more. For those not willing to wait, The answer may be as close as home.
In the not too distant future, we think the consumer may be able to buy a small appliance to plug into the outlet in their garage from water, produce hydrogen to fuel their car.
These new home systems for producing hydrogen will have numerous safety systems built in. People have become quite comfortable cooking and heating with natural gas in their homes. There's no reason to think it'll be any different with hydrogen.
It's possible some of the first fuel cell cars available in auto showrooms will have a home fueling unit included in the purchase price. Japan has long been one of the world's leading innovators in the application of technology. The Japanese are already positioning themselves to be a key player in the transition to hydrogen energy. Japan's World Energy Network project is a framework designed to support the development of hydrogen as a replacement for fossil fuels.
It will be very helpful for Japan to be able to produce its own fuel. Hydrogen will make this possible. At the moment, the government is strongly encouraging the development of fuel cells and other critical technologies.
The Japanese auto industry has made a massive investment in research and development. Companies like Honda, Toyota, Mazda, and Nissan are moving ahead with their commercialization strategy for their fuel cell cars.
Around 2010, we expect to begin full implementation of the hydrogen fueling infrastructure. The hydrogen vehicles will be seen commonly on our streets. Just now, we are locating some hydrogen fueling stations around Japan. There are already 5 in Tokyo. This will help Japanese people to become familiar and comfortable with hydrogen as a fuel.
With government support around the world expanding, big business is increasingly viewing the hydrogen energy transition as a major economic opportunity. Peter Leiden, in his work at Global Business Network, helps large corporations see emerging opportunities down the road.
So the fact that major oil companies are committing to hydrogen is perhaps the clearest indicator that the transition is underway. Companies like Shell and BP are leading the way, expanding their vision beyond petroleum and reinventing themselves as energy companies.
Jeremy Bentham, CEO Shell Hydrogen.
Shell Hydrogen's purpose is to bring a new and important thread into the overall energy mix. It does this in a way which is tailor-made to support our sustainable development interests, initiatives. We are working carefully with governments, and even more so, we are getting the experience of working with the people who will buy hydrogen and who will use hydrogen.
Carol Battershell, Director of Alternative Fuels, BP Energy.
BP's interested in hydrogen because it's clean energy and it's the energy of the future. We're looking at it in a couple different applications, so either for use in vehicles or for small power plants. BP sells energy to consumers, so as the energy industry transforms, we'll transform as well. We've moved already from more oil to more gas, and as the technology moves along, we'll move to more renewable and alternative energies as well.
If we think about the development of a significant hydrogen economy, then I think it's fair to say that it's already started.
When hydrogen becomes a mainstream energy source, we're talking about an energy flow that's going to be measured in the hundreds of billions of dollars.
It's enough to get any business person interested. Big ideas fare best when they offer the promise of big profits. With hydrogen, the economic upside appears to be huge. That's how the auto industry sees it too. All things being equal, who wouldn't want a car that's got nothing but water coming out of its tailpipe?
August of 2003, a massive blackout in the northeastern United States left nearly 50 million people without electricity.
Outage hit New York City shortly after 4 o'clock this afternoon.
A month later, the same thing happened in Italy, leaving almost the entire country without power. As our energy demands expand, the old system appears less and less able to cope.
98 or 99% of our power failures originate in the grid, almost all of those at the distribution level. So if you want reliable and affordable power supplies delivered to the customer, you have to make the power at or near where the customers are.
Experts say that the centralized architecture of the electrical grid is one of the U.S.'s biggest vulnerabilities.
The risk to our power grid has to be taken seriously. Fuel cells can help us create a more decentralized system that is going to be less vulnerable to breakdowns caused by human error, storms, and even terrorism.
The general trend of decentralizing the electricity business, moving the power plant from the remote central station hundreds of miles away to your basement, backyard, rooftop, and driveway, that all is a perfect fit to fuel cells and the hydrogen economy.
The grand vision is to replace every car with one that is hydrogen-powered. But when you consider the increasing challenges faced by the electric power industry, the vision could become even grander. Within each car is a small fuel cell power plant that cleanly and efficiently converts hydrogen into electricity. This has sparked a revolutionary idea. With essentially millions of mini power plants driving around the streets, Dr. Geoffrey Ballard, a fuel cell pioneer, was one of the first to ask a bold question. Is there a way to harness this massive generating power?
4% of the vehicles in California represent more generating capacity than the entire stationary capacity of California. I mean, that means you've got 25 times the generating capacity of California running around on the streets.
With the internet connecting all computers, you can take advantage of programs such as SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This runs like a screensaver on your computer, but every time you're not using your computer's processing power, you lend it out to help search for signals from intelligent life in other parts of the galaxy. This approach is called distributed computing.
Doing the same with cars has been dubbed the Internet of Energy.
The Internet of Energy is essentially the ability to park your car while at work, plug it in to the grid, and use the capability of converting hydrogen to electricity to supply power to the grid.
The concept is remarkably simple. Imagine the following scenario. A person arrives for work and pulls into his company's parking structure. Every parking spot is outfitted with a simple connector that supplies a small flow of hydrogen. When the car is plugged in, the car's fuel cell, which would otherwise be switched off, is now producing electricity, which is fed back into the building, potentially eliminating any need for outside power. When the person leaves work, he or she may even drive off with a full tank of hydrogen fuel.
If even 4% of the cars in the world were attached to this energy network, the need for stationary power plants could essentially be eliminated.
At home, while parked in the garage, the car's fuel cell can be used to light and heat the house or produce electricity that can be sold back to the utility grid.
This is a fundamental convergence advantage of fuel cells in that you could use your car to power your business place or your car to power your home when the car is not used.
A full fleet of U.S. cars and light trucks doing this would have about 6 to 12 times as much generating capacity as all the power companies now own.
This is a very powerful concept. It's exciting to imagine how profoundly an innovation like the Internet of Energy, running on hydrogen, could impact our lives in coming decades.
China has a population of more than 1.3 billion people. Over the past decade, the unprecedented growth in China's industrial output has greatly increased the demand for new sources of energy. Coal has long been the primary fuel driving China's economy.
You can't run the world's second or third biggest economy for long on 1920s vintage Pittsburgh-like coal technology. China's leadership realized this and in 1996 reversed energy policy to go away from coal and toward efficient use, renewables, natural gas, and hydrogen. This is happening so fast that China is responsible for 4/5 of the 7% drop in world coal burning since '96.
China's roads and highways are expanding at an amazing rate. Roughly 40,000 kilometers of new roads are being built each year. And on top of that, Chinese consumers are projected to buy more than twice as many cars this year as they did just 2 years ago.
In a cooperative venture with General Motors, Dr. Zhuo Bin and his team at Pan Asian Technical Auto Center have built the Phoenix fuel cell prototype.
Chinese leadership also seems to have a strong desire, which I think is wonderful, to leapfrog right over the West in areas like direct hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
With its superior ability to mass produce, it's very likely that China will become a major player in the coming hydrogen economy. Dr. Mao Zongqiang is professor of engineering at Tsinghua University in Beijing.
We have the government support from policymakers. We have many scientists and engineers and also some business people working together to develop the hydrogen. Over the long term, maybe 30 or 40 years, the hydrogen can give China a large part of the energy it will need. I think hydrogen will make life better for the Chinese people.
India will soon surpass China to become the most populous nation on Earth. It's a place of troubling contradictions. While it has nearly 300 million citizens living a modern middle-class lifestyle, almost 3 times that many struggle every day for survival. More than half the population has no access to clean water or electricity. Hydrogen is seen as a possible solution to many of these problems. Dr. Krishna Sapru.
There are enormous challenges. There is a tremendous scarcity of energy. Electricity, transportation fuel. India is spending a very large percentage of its foreign reserves to import energy.
In a country faced with economic and environmental uncertainty, finding workable alternatives to fossil fuels is essential.
India has a vigorous renewable energy program. We have something like 13 to 1400 megawatts of wind capacity already installed. We have a fairly thriving photovoltaics industry. We have a lot of biogas plants which use animal and agricultural residue. The father of the Indian nation, Mahatma Gandhi, said that development in his country should start with the village. If you can develop decentralized technologies for producing and using hydrogen, then it changes the lives of the dispossessed, the underprivileged, in a remarkable way in every part of this globe.
In developing world, hydrogen means availability of energy, which means freedom, mobility, clean air, education, healthcare, jobs, sustainability.
In the South Pacific, Vanuatu is a nation of volcanic islands located about 1,200 miles northeast of Sydney, Australia. Vanuatu's dependence on foreign oil has created an enormous drain on their economy. Prime Minister Edouard Natape.
When you look at it, 80% of the population live in the rural areas. In most cases, because there's no electricity, there are no telephones in the rural areas. So communication is very important, and we feel that if we develop the geothermal energy and produce hydrogen fuel, it will ensure that our students are in a position to study at night and come up with better results. Also in the health centers, there are some drugs or medicine that need to be stored in a cold storage. That we cannot do right now.
Vanuatu has almost no exports. Added to that, more than 90% of their export revenue goes towards oil purchases, a trade imbalance that cannot be sustained. Nevertheless, this little group of islands represents a prime example of how the tables could turn.
Vanuatu is sitting on this ring of fire. This water here, the surface temperature at the moment is over 50 degrees Celsius. When we drill, say let's drill down to 1,000 meters, you get closer to the source of this hot spring coming up, there will be a lot of steam. Hydrogen fuel can be produced right on this side. It can be produced right on this side, and this hydrogen fuel can be sold to other countries to get more money for the country. That's what we want the country to develop.
The switch from an oil-dependent economy to a hydrogen-dependent economy would enable them to use their own resources to produce hydrogen.
Vanuatu possesses so much geothermal energy potential that it could easily produce all the hydrogen it needs and even become an energy exporter.
This plan of having hydrogen fuel produced within the country, it is something that brings me joy. I feel that, yes, I'm really doing something for my nation. I'm really doing something for my country. Not just working and getting paid, but I'm doing something for my nation. I'm very, very happy about it.
For the moment, the global energy map continues to be dominated by coal, oil, and natural gas. Leaders of these traditional industries see a strong role for themselves, providing the primary energy source for the production of hydrogen. While our use of coal and oil is expanding by about 2% annually, the use of solar energy and wind is growing at a rate of 25 to 30% each year. Ultimately, cost, technology advances, and public perception will determine how fossil fuels will fare against cleaner, renewable sources of energy.
There's a huge amount of renewable potential in terms of solar energy in most of the developing world.
Any place in the world has some energy source or other that can make hydrogen, and often it's cheaper than what they're doing right now.
This is truly a global race, and every continent now have a major trust into renewable and sustainable energy.
Things can happen very quickly sometimes, and when I look back at the restructuring of the U.S. economy in World War II in a very short period of time, what we're talking about with energy now is actually rather trivial compared with the restructuring we did then.
Someday, I think the world will look back on the transition to a hydrogen economy as one of the most important, if not the most important, achievements in our history.
In little more than a decade, the World Wide Web has grown to connect millions of people virtually everywhere on Earth. It has become, in essence, the nervous system of humanity. The same thing will happen with energy. The fact that hydrogen can be produced anywhere using wind, solar, geothermal, and other locally available power sources means that all the world's people can be part of this new era.
We can't even begin to imagine the transforming capability of hydrogen as an energy form and the markets and the products that it will lead to.
Hydrogen can level the playing field, extending the promise of a better life to everyone, including billions of the world's disadvantaged people.
The circle which had no beginning, no ending, in which we all belong. What it means that you and I, we're going to have to work together.
Hydrogen has the potential to create a better world. A hydrogen-powered economy is going to be more stable and peaceful than today's world.
Clean, inexhaustible hydrogen energy can meet virtually all of mankind's energy needs. I'm Leonard Nimoy. The sun is rising on the hydrogen age.